Hello, I'm Jerry Fort. Gonna read a story from this book here called The Scary States of America, 50 Weird and Terrifying Stories, one from each state based on true events, by Michael Teitelbaum. So the state I'm gonna read about this time is Montana. And the story is called Harvesting Organs. My buddy Cowboy D's real name is Darren Floyd. He lives on a cattle ranch with his mom and dad in Dupur, Montana. When we first became online friends, I thought it was weird that a cowboy was into the paranormal, but when he told me what happened on his ranch, it all made sense. I'm 14 now, but from the time I was a little kid, my dad, Harvey Floyd, told me the stories he'd heard about. My dad, Harvey Floyd, told me the stories he'd heard about cattle mutilations in Montana. He also heard the talk about UFOs and aliens doing it, but he didn't believe any of that. My dad grew up and worked around livestock his whole life. He inherited our ranch, called Floyd Ranch, from my grandfather. Like me, he grew up here. My dad couldn't figure out why anyone would want to hurt cattle, but he didn't buy the UFO theories. He believed wolves, coyotes, and mountain lions were the more likely killers. That is until he saw things with his own eyes. My mom and dad and I were outside finishing up some chores one evening when we spotted a circle of light shining down from the sky. It lit up the hog pen. Then 2 pairs of small red and green lights appeared below the larger white light, like flies buzzing around a porch light. Okay, that's what they were like. They were like flies buzzing around a porch light. Huh. "Wait here," my dad said as he stepped slowly toward the lights. I was real scared as he moved closer to the hog pen. I don't think I ever saw Dad scared before, but I could tell by the look on his face and the way he was moving, real quiet, that he was spooked. "There's something wrong," Dad called to Mom. "We shouldn't stay here on the ranch tonight. We have to leave." Now I'm not one to disobey my dad, especially with that look on his face, so I hurried to the car. Mom and Dad got in, and we quickly drove away from the ranch. But the weird lights followed us into the darkness. The large white circle hovered just off the road, keeping a few feet behind our car. But the smaller red and green lights flew alongside us, like they were escorting us off the property. Then, when we were a few miles away, all the lights suddenly spun into a wide U-turn and sped back in the direction of our ranch. My dad kept driving. He told me later that he wanted to turn the car around and drive back to the ranch. He wanted to find out what was going on and protect his property if those strange lights were some kind of threat, like he suspected they were. But he couldn't bring himself to do it. He couldn't risk our safety. "We can go to Wanda's," Mom suggested. That's Aunt Wanda, Mom's sister. She lived in the next town. "Spend the night, then go back in the morning. I'm sure everything is going to be all right." Weirdly, none of us talked about what we thought those lights might be. I think we just hoped that everything would be normal in the morning, that this was all some kind of strange dream. We drove the 10 miles to Aunt Wanda's house and spent the night there. Not wanting to scare my aunt and her family or get them thinking that he was a lunatic, my dad told them that our house was being fumigated and we needed to sleep somewhere else for one night. He said he was sorry for the short notice, and nobody asked any questions. I didn't sleep so well that night. I was tossing and turning. I couldn't get the picture of those lights out of my head. My dad, who's usually a good sleeper, told me the next morning that he had a real bad feeling that kept him awake most of the night, too. After what seemed like forever, the sun finally rose. I jumped from my bed and ran downstairs to find Mom and Dad already at the breakfast table, anxious to get back home. After we ate, Mom thanked Aunt Wanda and we headed for the ranch. At first, when we pulled into the driveway, nothing looked unusual. Could the whole thing really have been a dream, I wondered? But when he stopped into the barn, Dad quickly discovered why the lights, whatever they were, wanted us away for the night. It was a horrible sight when Dad finally let me see what happened. 3 cows were dead. One was torn apart. All its internal organs were missing, but there was no blood around the body. Another cow stared up at me with empty sockets, no eyes, just holes in the skull. The third cow had all the blood drained from its body. Its skin hung on its bones like an empty feed sack, squeezed dry. I ran out of the barn, sweating and more nauseous than I've ever been in my life. I was ready to puke. Dad looked like he felt the same way. "Harvey, Darren, what is it?" Mom cried. She had waited outside. "Don't go in there, Ruth," Dad cried. "Just don't go in. I shouldn't have let the boy in." Maybe Dad was right. Maybe I shouldn't have gone in. I'll never forget what I saw as long as I live. Dad hurried to the hog pen where he had first seen the lights. A nightmarish scene awaited him there, too. I followed Dad to the pen where we found a hog standing perfectly stiff as a board. Dad pushed the animal and it tipped over, tumbling to the ground like a cut tree. It hit the ground and the sound of its bones shattering inside its bag of skin pushed me over the edge. I turned and hurled in the nearby bushes. I wanted to run, but I couldn't look away. I caught my breath as I watched Dad kneeling beside a second hog. This one was lying on its side. Its jaw was missing, and its body looked spongy and wet. Dad looked sick. This was his prize hog. It had weighed in at an enormous 250 pounds. "Help me move it, Darren," Dad said. I squatted next to him and grabbed the animal's hind legs. We were stunned when we lifted the body easily. It weighed only 20 or 30 pounds now. What could have done this?" Dad asked. But I could tell he already knew the answer. The stories he'd never believed were true. Our ranch had been visited by aliens who had conducted bizarre experiments on the livestock. Who else could have mutilated the animals this way? Mom and Dad decided not to report the incident. They didn't want to be featured on the front page of the papers as local nutcases. They just wanted to put it all behind us. Still, I couldn't help wondering if the deadly visitors would ever return for more animals or human victims next time. Man, that's creepy. Poor animals. Okay. Well, that was what did I just read? Montana. That was a shorter story. All right, that was The Scary States of America by Michael Teitelbaum. If you like these kind of stories, these kind of books, you collect them, paranormal type stuff, get you a copy of this. You'll enjoy, I think, having it in your collection. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. We will see you on the next one.